High rollers, high risk, where VIP strategy meets compliance.
Good afternoon. My name is Oliver De Bono. I'm the co-founder of Quantum Gaming. Essentially, we are a platform. Guys, we can move over one this way. Maybe it will be a bit closer. I just want to welcome very quickly to the stage our panelists. You've got the names up here, but Eric Su from DG Plus, Stepan Torovsky, did I get that right? The CEO of BetBoom Latam, and Darwin Malishi from Solaire Resort. So today we're here to talk about essentially a core subject within the gaming space. And I find it quite unique that there isn't more on this. Ultimately, the VIP market within the operator space generates anywhere between 50 and as high as 80% of resort and online revenues. We know this, but recently and globally, obviously regulations are impacting how we treat and work with our VIP customers. So I want to kick this off, just jump straight into it. Essentially, Eric, as you're closest to me, I just want to jump onto it. Tell us the fundamental difference. How do you define your VIP customers?
It's a very good question, because usually the VIP you are defining as a high revenue customers to bring the revenue. But when you see the revenue, you have to look at the difference of the time frame. So it's a short-time revenue or long-time revenue. So the VIP players, we will say it's a high level of lifetime value. So it's really depending on how you define how your operation keep the players in your platform. What is the life cycle of your players? So when we define the VIP player is about what's your strategy for your customer, your relation with your customer. You're focused on the retention. So we will have a different span of the VIP players. So that's when we internally look at that, we will say, okay, even a median spending player who tends to be more loyal and long-term to us could be a VIP player. So when we set up the VIP program, when we set up the rewards, we will look at those players that not only in the short-term revenue they're going to turnover they have, but also what we see, whether this is potential long-term value players to us. So that's how we define it. Yeah.
So I mean, essentially, this is the question, right? The audience is here to understand. I mean, we hear the word VIP all the time, but what is it essentially? A player comes in, drops a couple of, let's say, €1,000 or $1,000. Do you automatically define them as a VIP? No, you want to look at the life cycle. You do put them into a unique funnel, and I think this is where we start identifying them. But ultimately, I think what we want to look at is the strategy. Once we start onboarding them, what avenue do they take differently? And Stefan, I want to pop over to you now on this one, because we were talking a little bit about this off stage, the difference between markets, right? What happens in Brazil versus what happens in Asia, the treatment of a VIP is very different. And you gave me some great examples of the expectations of a VIP player, right? So I'd just love you to give the audience a little bit of a taste. I mean, what is the fundamental difference? What are they asking for? What are the avenues you take to keep VIPs happy?
I mean, it's always all about the personal relationship, yeah. And in 26, like it's a lot of like opportunities to use AI, for example, but that's not how you treat VIPs. They all need the very, very personal touch, yeah, and they would feel it, yeah. So you do research everything about their lives, yeah. You see like where they work, what they post online, like what's their interest, like, and what the companies they work in, when these companies release their earnings, when they get the dividends, yeah, like you get really, really deep, like you see their family members, you see what they like, what's their girlfriend name, what's their wife name, does their wife know their girlfriend, like how do they interact with each other, and stuff like that. And when you're there, yeah, when they feel like they can trust you, they can come to you with a variety of different requests, yeah, like as we were talking about, like it varies like from, we had a VIP who asked us about like energy drink. Said, I really want this cold energy drink. Can you deliver that? Yeah, and it's like just a can of energy drink. Another one said like, look, I have an elevator problem in my apartment building, so we had to fix it. Yeah. Another one said like, okay, well, I have this new girlfriend, but like I want to enchant some parts of her, and you can't really say no because that's kind of like builds your relationship with them. Yeah. So they're all very different. They all have different requests. Some of them like more complex, some of them like easier, but they're humans and you need to treat them that way. Yeah.
So this is what I find really interesting. I mean, when you're coming from the outside of the gaming space, essentially you hear VIP player, high value, maybe you give them more rewards. I don't think many people assume that it's going to be making deliveries or support outside of the realm of your product. And this is where it gets interesting. How far do you go to maintain a relationship with a VIP player, considering they do bring in the majority of gambling revenues to most of the operators? But I want to switch over to you a little bit, Darwin. Land-based, obviously it's,
Yes.
let's say, not substantially different. I think you still give the concierge service. There's still quite a, let's call it, differential between the average player. But I assume it happens inside the realm of the resort, or do you expand beyond that?
Well, usually for land-based, from my experience, based on my experience, I've been in 25 years for the cage in operations. So we give them like a premium service as well, or like attention to them. But of course, we have to, in reality, we have to tell them that we have to do a proper check, like your funds. It's supposed to be, and then you have to, and then of course you have to inform the VIP managers that we have to do this one before we can proceed with a program to start with.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So that's actually what we wanted to talk about a little bit more on this subject, right? So regulations are now kicking in, and once upon a time, I do remember, you know, VIPs could come through the door, and those checks obviously happened at a later stage. We're not talking about strictly the Philippine market. Globally, obviously, many markets are regulating, and obviously this is leading to different, let's say, substantially different approaches for VIPs in each market. So today, you mentioned something really interesting, Darwin. So before you can identify them as a VIP, you want to do the background checks. You
Yes,
need
correct.
to do your KYC on them.
Yes, yes.
Otherwise, you're going to be like, okay, we can't accept this player to begin with.
True.
But at what stage does that happen? Is it, let's say, the regulated amount? Is it a threshold? How do you identify, okay, we now need to background check this individual?
Well, usually it started with the VIP manager or the VIP persons introducing that patron. And then, of course, they'll do their EKYC, they will send it to us. Plus, there'll be some background checks, especially if they want to do a credit for a casino. So, in order for them to pass the, in order for them to provide a credit, we will have to do a credit check. And then, if they have records, past records in other casinos, and they have good records, then we will provide them what credit should be given to them. And then, of course, it will go to the cage, and then they'll open our program. And then we will do our check as well. We will do our physical checking that this is the VIP person that we're giving the chips or the program. So mostly we are doing background checks and the check on the person itself before we allow them to play.
I love this because it's like very, very different, let's say, criteria depending on the market you're in. And Eric, I want to switch back to you on this one because obviously you were discussing quite a detailed formula. What is the lifetime individual of this user? At what point do you balance out, obviously we must, you know, compliance, due diligence versus, you know, the players, let's call it enjoyment of the brand, or without creating too many speed bumps. So I want to dive into this a little bit further. Obviously regulations are changing. At what point do you define, okay, now we have identified this person as a VIP. Do you then identify, for example, certain checks? Is it a tiered KYC, or do you just do an extended KYC?
There are minimum requirements from the compliance perspective. What's the thresholds you need to trigger a compulsive EDD check? So we always follow the rules and based on the threshold, the turnover, the transaction limit that they have. So that's a trigger compulsive KYC and enhanced KYC. From operation perspective, we always also monitor the transaction behavior, the players' betting behavior to identify this is a VIP, and we will see if there's any suspicious behavior, abnormal behavior. We need to intervene before the trigger. So that's what we constantly monitor. So especially in sports betting, and you will facing some issues with some of the sudden behavior change of some VIP players means you might have a risk of the of betting syndicate involved and getting a VIP account because they want to hit your book. And also from the AML perspective, you will see players in the live casino dumping big amount of bets. So there will be a trigger alarms, and then we were based on the analysis of the behavior to decide whether we're going to run the enhanced KYC.
So this is where it also gets interesting, right? And I'm pretty sure, look, having been in this space for many years, players essentially don't want to give documentation. It's always resistance, right? At what point do you say, okay, we need to draw the line over here, we can no longer accept this player's business?
I think first of all is that you need to look at the compliance requirements. You always need to make sure that you comply. And you need to balance about your interference with the players and the revenue and the complying risk. You need to look at the data, but also at the same time, so you need to build a good relationship with your customer, right? Especially VIP. We should have a VIP manager on the personal account manager to already reach out to players at the stage that they have been identified as VIP players. So you build a good personal relationship with them. And then at some stage, if you feel that you need to do enhanced check, you need to interfere, you need to get more documents, whatever, based on the relationship, it's easier to get there, collaborate with you. But we shouldn't take the risk that we will be in the risk of the compliance by not really checking the players when it should be. So it's not good for the business, and also it's in long term, the customer will have much higher operation risk to the business rather than just the revenue they bring into it. Yeah, so that's our approach.
So there are some great approaches we've come across over time, especially in more regulated markets, right? Essentially, if you know that player is potentially moving into that, let's call it VIP category, I think the target for many of the operators today is to slowly start introducing them to KYC requirements instead of, let's say, shoving too many requirements on at once. But Stepan, I want to pop over to you because you mentioned two interesting things I actually want to touch on. One being the concierge service, because I think that changes from market to market. Now, you're obviously operating in the LATAM market, and I think you allocate that personal human touch to them right away. I think we've all seen it. You know, the human element, the concierge, has become the new luxury. Many brands across the world are utilizing bots to communicate with their customers. You know, the human element is now luxury. Once that kicks in, I mean, I assume there are multiple tiers of how you will treat a VIP, right? Before the concierge service, are there different offers that you're giving this player to identify them as part of the process?
I think it's basically starts with the first deposit. Yeah, that gives you a lot of indication where you can categorize the player. Yeah, and just following up a little bit on what Eric was saying, like we are like highly compliant company, but we don't see it as in a bad way. Yeah, because the compliance and players protection, it's there like to support the VIPs as well. Yeah, we don't want them to spend all of their money and be unhappy. Yeah, we want to like monitor like they spend like the percentage of their income there, and we would highlight them. Okay, like hey, you spend like a little bit more this month. Yeah, when you normally do like is like anything happening? Yeah, or you spend less. Yeah. And that's kind of like builds the trust as well. Like, and if we need to enhance like our like KYC process, they're gonna be much more like willing to work with us. Yeah, because they see like that's we use this compliance limitations to protect them and to care about them. Yeah. You know, sometimes like when I'm like just coming back to classifying the VIP. Like you can see like okay you have first deposit and it, like it starting really well, yeah, but then like the and you categorize automatically the VIP at the high tier, yeah, but then it goes down, yeah, and down the line you realize that the person actually either sold their flat, yeah, or they wanted to double their kids' college money, yeah, and you don't want this kind of like players. You want to kind of discourage them from playing, yeah, and that's where like your internal mechanism, it's where you like human touch kind of kicks in, yeah. And it's kind of like in terms of the concierge, yeah, you get to the client immediately, yeah. You start building relationship from day one, yeah. You get the feedback for the product. You see like what they like, what they don't like, yeah. And you just take it from there, yeah. It's personalization. It's still quite rare, yeah. And as I mentioned at the beginning, like some operators we see like trying to outsource it to AI. AI can like help your managers, VIP managers, to aggregate the data around the user, yeah. But it still needs to be like this typos in the communication and a certain tone of voice, which gets your like this personal touch and VIP client relationship.
But let me ask you a question, because you mentioned something as well that was very interesting. You know, the background checks aren't just purely, let's say, due diligence background checks. Ultimately, you want to understand who the individual is. So how do those customers feel about you approaching them to say, oh, you like this kind of wine? Or, you know, what is the feedback you will get from a VIP when they've understood that you've committed, let's say, to those background checks on them?
Well, it takes time to build this trust. Yeah, you can ask about like the wine from day one, but like they don't have to respond to you.
Yeah.
So you always kind of like feel the room. Yeah, like you first like wine and dine before you like continue this like harder commitments. But it depends on the human always. Yeah, and so for example in Brazil people are more open, yeah. Like on day one, they can tell you like their life story, yeah. In Russia, like it takes 9 months to get to know the name, yeah, or make them smile, yeah. So it's very very different, yeah. So
Yeah,
you need to
again.
be very country and specific.
So, I mean, that's interesting. We know obviously different players, different parts of the world are going to respond differently to different offers. Essentially, this is, you know, a global market. But I want to touch on something with you now, Darwin. Obviously, Solaire, established brand here. What makes your VIP program different to the other resorts, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, this is the same. We personalize them, of course, but of course we don't compromise. I mean, we have to have the proper regulatory checks, compliance. So to be a strike a balance of regulatory and service. So if you're a genuine player, you would be okay subject with that kind of for us for regulations. So we balance it out both.
Great. So again, you need to be competitive, but you don't want to take it too
Sure.
far as well. So looking at behaviors, there's something actually that came up in the questions as well. Just out of curiosity, maybe I can give this one to you, Eric. What are the vital mistakes that VIPs managers can make with VIPs?
I think it's back to the lifetime value things that we are talking about. So some of the VIP manager may try to get short-term revenue rather than a long-term lifetime value, because you don't know whether the player is going to leave the platform in next week, next month, right, next year. So you rather just generate the revenue in the short term rather than looking into the bigger picture of the long-term value of the customer. So that's usually, I think that's trigger a lot of mistake basically, because if you are short-sighted, you can make a lot of mistake. You're going to ignore the compliance, you ignore the operational risk, you can ignore the even try to identify whether this is a real VIP player or not. I mean, in sports betting, some players can be still not really even high turnover players. Doesn't really mean a high revenue players. So if you keep your mind stay into a short-term goal, you can make a lot of mistake.
Well, definitely, right? You don't want to push too hard, but you touched on something really interesting again there, and I think ultimately this is what the audience is here to hear. You know, there are two frames of thought over here. Do I generate a solid lifetime customer, or what can we do with this customer today? And I think finding a balance essentially between these two processes is the key. But one thing I am interested in as well, and Stepan, I want to move over to you now for this one, is red flags. You mentioned something a little bit interesting there. Maybe a customer sold a property, suddenly has a large sum of money. what are the red flags you're looking for? Is this suddenly accelerated deposit behavior? What could we understand are the key triggers to look into these situations further?
Yeah, it's all about their spend. Yeah, like if it goes up or goes down, it's like there's an average line. It's like if it goes up and down, like you can like see what's happening. Yeah, it's and ideally the VIP manager reaches out. Yeah, like we had a case. We have a case where like the person started to spend a little bit more. Yeah, and we said like, okay, what's going on? And said like, well, we have like illness in family. Yeah, and it just gets my mind out of it. Yeah. So, and now then the person comes in, like say, like, can you just give me like some bonuses? We give them the no questions asked. Yeah. So like, and that's about like long-term value than just immediate cash out in a way. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And one thing I do want to touch on as well while we're on the subject, because again, you know, managing VIPs is ultimately the goal over here. But I'm curious, and I want to start with the land base over here. Just from my personal side, like what is the limit that you would accept? Is there a risk, for example, limitation? Player comes in with $1 million. Is that acceptable in the land base? Obviously, I'm saying post checks, but the casino assumes that there may be a risk factor over here with these players. Is there a criteria where you would obviously require to identify the user further, right? Darwin,
Well, it depends on the property. Some properties will accept higher risk, but in the Philippines it's highly regulated. So, I mean, I think we couldn't afford to have high risk. We need to have, like I said yesterday, we need to strike a balance of everything. Proper checks, regulatory, before we can proceed. So, but in other, where I work with other countries, they would have, they would accept high risk.
Yeah, I mean, look at states and Macau, right? For example, they take much higher risk. Out of curiosity, what is the? Do you know what the daily bet limitation is here in the Philippines?
Not really, because I'm not in the table games operations.
I didn't want to go too much into that. So, look, essentially, I think what's happening globally, and you know, we don't have very much time left, but I want to touch on this. There is market behavior changing, and essentially, if we're going back 10 years, you know, whale player behavior was very different because limitations were not as enforced as they are today. We are coming to a point where there are certain restrictions. I mean, let's take Germany and Sweden, for example. Obviously, what's happening in the Netherlands as well. Do we see those type of limitations arriving here in Southeast Asia, Eric, where players may be limited to how much they can bet? €1, only slot game spins?
I think at the moment it's not really going to introduce to the market because this is a very young market. The demographic of the players is not very clear. So I think that is we basically in here there is a first-time deposit limit already introduced for the players. There's 500 peso first-time deposit, and there's other limitation as well. But especially when you trigger the AML check and enhanced due diligence. So I think that's very at this stage I think it will be okay. So I don't think they will be introduced very shortly. But I think we need to monitor the result of the. I mean, we are not only talking about VIP, right?
Yeah.
So that's overall of all the markets. So affordability check. All those things, I think at the moment it's not really going to introduce in Philippines, in my opinion. But in long term, we will see. We need to monitor the whole behavior of the customer, and that's also discussion will be happen between the regulator and the operator.
So this is quite interesting because going on to that subject, and I think anyone who's worked, for example, in the European markets has seen that essentially introducing, let's call it over-regulation, and I think here in Southeast Asia it's pretty safe, but over-regulation has led in many jurisdictions to new black markets, right? And that's what you want to avoid. We saw this in the DACH markets, we've seen this in Scandinavia, and essentially these markets are growing. Obviously with the introduction of high taxes, it is limiting to what the operator can give to the players, right? So, Stefan, we don't have much time, but I want to touch on this. How do the markets affect what you're offering the players?
A lot, yeah. Like in Brazil, for example, we can't give the deposit bonus, first deposit bonus, but we can do same in Mexico. Yeah, and then, I mean, these new emerging markets, they as you said, they see like all the mistakes Europe did, yeah, and they see now like that some of the countries like 70-80% of black market just because they overregulated is essentially it's not protecting the player who goes and bets somewhere else and then can't claim anything back if the money got stolen. So, but emerging markets, I think they learn from those mistakes and they're trying to balance it out. Yeah.
Fantastic. Look, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. There's a lot more we can discuss about VIPs. What I do want to say, first of all, is thank you to Sigma. Thank you to our panelists. If you are interested in knowing more about VIPs, these are the gentlemen that know the business. Thank you very much, and over to you, Trudy.
A round of applause, and thank you so much to Oliver. Always lovely to see Oliver at these events.